was
This meeting is being recorded.
I'm so sorry for yesterday. My apologies to everyone. So I'm going to the class now. So going to take you guys on. Sorry, first of all, sure you all know my name, but for those who didn't like get to be in the class yesterday, so my name is Collins. I'm a backend engineer. So moving down to the class now, I'll be taking you on RESTful API and Postman. So let's go into it. So I have a slide I will present to you all. So just give me some minutes so I could like connect to my system and share. So I hope you all can see my system, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you very much. So moving on to the slide. So probably I know you guys might not be new to the word REST APIs, but I'm just going to give you a brief understanding on my own end. So probably I know most of you that are new to it might feel like, okay, you don't really have a typical idea on it. I was the same way, like that. I was like that, that was like in 2017 when I first heard of the word REST API. So I was quite confused. I was like, what's this one for? Is it a new programming language or something that I need to learn? But with few explanation from my friends and other colleagues, so I got a proper understanding of what RESTful API means and the methods behind. So what we'll be looking through is just we get to know what a REST API is all about, the API architectural types, REST API verbs and naming collection, then API status codes and meaning. Then we talk about the tools that are basically required for us to test our APIs. So moving on to the next slide. So what is REST API? In quotes, RESTful API. So REST API, so what it stands for? REST stands for Representational State Transfer, while API stands for Application Programming Interface. So basically is in a plain understanding, so API is a representational state transfer for application programming interface in a plain understanding. So it's just an understanding whereby you have two channels communicating together in order to like pass in packets, packages, or signals from one system to another. So as I explained there, so it's just in a plain language, in a plain understanding, is a channel of communication or accessing data between two or more applications, e.g., it could be client to server or server to client communication. So it was invented or it was brought up by a man called Fieldings in 2000. So I think back then there was some various kind of way of communicating to like servers and also from client to server also. So, but he came out and okay, look better way in order to like have those things channeled down to the client without making any other difficulty, without having difficulty in doing that. So majorly, APIs are just like protocols. They are more like protocols. I'm sure I'm communicating, guys.
Yes, sure. We can hear you.
Okay. So API are more like protocols. Is not majorly something that we say is a programming stuff.
Okay, I don't know if I'm the only one. Marvelous, please can you hear the instructor because I can no longer hear from my end.
Yeah, I can't, I can't hear him either.
Can I thought it was from your network or something.
I think it's a network glitch. I don't know. Maybe we can send him a message. How many times? Yeah, Collins, if you can hear us, please just maybe you should leave the call and join again or something. All right. So I think our instructor is having a little network problem, but I hope we are following through, right? I hope we understand what he is explaining for those of us on the call. And I see that others are not on the call. So can we maybe drop a message on Discord for the others to join? Bendex, maybe you can do that, please. Okay. All right, Ainde. Okay, so let's just wait for a while, maybe like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Okay.
Okay, Collins, I don't know if you can hear us, but I just sent you a direct message here on Zoom. So probably I think we cannot hear you and your screen is blank. So please, if you can hear me, please just leave the call and join back again. And also maybe you can check your network. And if you have another network, maybe you can switch your network to have a stronger network. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think he just left the call. So probably okay. I think he's still on the call. So Collins.
Yeah, yeah. I don't really know what happened. It's just like I was kicked out.
I think it's a network problem. Can you share your screen again so we can proceed?
Okay, sorry for that.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
So I hope you guys can see my screen now.
Yes. Yes,
okay.
We can.
So, like I was saying, like I don't know where I stopped, where you guys left. So I'm going to start all over again. So we already know the meaning of REST. We already know the meaning of APIs. So we have a broad knowledge of what REST API means. So, and I explained that it was first brought in or created by Real Fine Fieldings in 2020. So moving down to the next slide, where I have a diagram that does show a proper understanding of what RESTful means. So for you to have a RESTful API, there are some certain circles that need to be met. So for you to have a proper channel to have a RESTful API, you must have an endpoint. So endpoints are just basically URL link or your base URL, phrase or verb that you use in communicating to the server. So on the screen here, you have an example of two endpoints, which is the get and the post. So these are basically called endpoints. So endpoints are just the medium or the channel that you that would enable you to have a good, connection between two servers. So let's say in the diagram now, I have a client and a server. So the client is trying to connect to the server to get some basic information. So let's say the client made an action to request for her balance or his balance. So made a request down to the server. The server gets that information, receive it, break it down into machine languages that it understands. Then after that, get the basic information required, package it back to a response, and send it down to the client. So once this circle is being obtained, the circle of server getting back to the client is being obtained by the client. So that's when you have a RESTful API in a typical way. For you to have a RESTful API, there must be a request and a response. If these things are not placed in a proper way, you don't have a proper RESTful API. So RESTful was gotten from when you say you have a good connection or better response from the server. So REST successful API. So the success was taken out. So it was now RESTful. Now to show that, okay, it was successful. So moving down to the next slide, where we talk about API architectural types. So you can see there we have different types of RESTful API. So, different type of API. So we have the RESTful, which I just explained. Then we have the SOAP API and we have the RPC API. So these are different kind of, should I say, protocols that were of existence, which is the SOAP and the RPC before the before the use of REST API. So going further to explain, so API architectural type. So we have the REST API. So it's a scalable, readable, and lightweight structure used for transferring data from a server to a requesting client. So a REST API are always encoded in a JSON format. So JSON format is more like a JavaScript object notation format. So why this said is scalable, because it can take in several numbers of data that you throw into it. So it accepts them. It's readable because it's being packaged in a way whereby you can read it and say, okay, these certain values are relating to this certain objects. So it's lightweight because it doesn't take much use of the server. It doesn't like make use of the server runtime application and all that. So if you can look through my slide, you can see the a pictorial example of what it is. So where you have the data, you have the type. So the data contains the information that was being received from the server. So the type, the ID, the attribute. So these are readable. If I should present it to anyone, this is very, very readable. So that's for REST API. So moving down to the next one, which is the SOAP API. So SOAP API is a protocol also, like I said earlier. So it's a simple object access protocol. It is a highly secured protocol structure for transmitting of data across network. So and also encoded in XML. So XML means extensible markup language format. So you can see in the diagram there where I have an example of what SOAP API means. So you can see how it's difficult for me to even see what I'm having there because it's not that readable. It's not that scalable because when you have much of this junk down, it's slows down your response and other stuff. So, and it's not readable because I can't really state exactly what is there. But the SOAP API are basically used by, let's say, organizations that are so key about their information. For example, like banks, security agencies, like that, all this kind of stuff. So this protocol are being adopted by majorly top informant company that keep secured stuff. So moving down to the next one, which is the ROPC. ROPC majorly is a remote procedural call. Is a protocol used for invoking or executing scripts on servers. So looking at the diagram here, you can see that you're just seeing majorly like C plus kind of language that are being used to um, invoke calls to a server. So what it means by invoking calls to server, I know most of you as a backend engineer, you do most call like let's say using Composer, using npm packages. So those packages are remote procedural calls. So whereby you get to do composer.install this, npm.install that. So those are the kind of APIs that are being used for those kind of terminal calls. So they're majorly used in um, in shell and in bash format. So I don't know if I'm communicating very well. Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
you are.
sir.
Yeah, also, sorry, Colin, there is a chat, so you can sometimes go through the chat because most of our students, they can't talk, so they drop messages on the chat. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So moving down to the next part of the course, um, which is REST API, verbs, and crawl. So majorly, in time when it's during the process of inventing REST API, so they had to like come up with some terminal should I say verbs, or should I say naming structure that will flow with every other activities or actions that you can perform within a server. So those actions were pointed across different verbs. So we have the post, which can be used to create, like increase information or create values into the server. We have the get, which can be used to retrieve information or read information from the server. So we have the put, we have the patch, which is basically used to update information in the server. Then you have the delete, which is used for the delete in prod. So these major verbs were created to serve these various actions that are being done by a server or a client can perform in a server. So I can see, well, if you can look into this slide, you can see put, you can see patch. Majorly they are used for the simple purpose, but it's advisable you use patch most times because, well, let's go into that. We'll go into that, we'll get more information on that. So moving down to the next page of the slide. So the post verb. So the post verb is majorly used to perform a create action or create a new entity to the server. So looking at the two examples that I have here, you can see majorly how you can like perform actions using an endpoint with the post verb. So you have the post, you have the URL, you have the user, you have the new call. So from the base URL, which is the HTTPS then slash colon topuniverse.org. That's the base URL. That's the server you're trying to connect to, right? So in terms of making all this kind of structuring, you just have to like give it a proper naming that would suit what you want to do. So like me, for me now, I have an example that shows that is just telling me that, okay, I'm trying to create a new user. So users new. So that's just to tell you, okay, I'm trying to create a new user. So on the other hand, we have the example, almost the same thing, but you can see how different it was. The previous one was having new, the other one is having a create. So it still falls down the same way. So the payload there is more like the information you're trying to create or information you're trying to push down to the server for you for it to be created inside the server. Then moving down to the get web. Oh, sorry. So majorly, the get web is mainly used to fetch records from the database or from the server. So if you look at the example that I gave down there, you can see a different, it's quite different from the post one. So the get variable, it's something that, okay, in terms of getting a certain or performing an action, you need to pass like a parameter in order to like get what you need. So you have the you have the users, you have a parameter. So this part here is the parameter that I'm passing, right? So I'm now specifying what I want to do, which is the get. So it's it can be named anyhow you want to do it. It can be structured anyhow because it doesn't have to be my own way. But for me, I prefer doing it in a way whereby I get to know what I'm trying to like perform or the action I'm trying to do. So the parameter here, the user ID, can be passed in directly, which you have here on my right hand example. Whereby you have the user, you have the user ID, which is the 2348. So another way you can perform the get action is by doing the same with two. So this naming collection it's very, so it doesn't matter what you want to, it doesn't matter your naming convention. It's just like how you structure it for you to understand what you're trying to do. So going down to the patch and the put verb. So the put verb is majorly used to update the entire entity of a specific record. So let's say, for example, someone is trying to update typically the entire record, or let me say entire record of this entire record into a database. So at that point, you might want to use puts, you might want to use patch, but the puts most times takes much of the server time. It requires much response from the server. You know, it takes much runtime to process. But the patch already knows, okay, there are some certain changes that I need to do, which is quite different from what I have. So it picks the ones that are basically that the user changed at that specific time, and goes through with it and like, okay, these are the certain ones I need to change at this point. So this is what I'm accepting to change. But the puts will majorly take everything. Even if there are no changes, it goes over again and like replace the whole record. So which in that case takes much of the server time. So moving down to the delete verb. Oh, sorry. sorry, there's a typo. So the delete verb is majorly used to like, okay, delete a specific record. Either you delete a specific record, either by um, passing the record you're trying to like delete, be it the um, user ID, be it the information you're trying to delete from the database, so things like that. So that's what the get verb, the delete verb is all about. So moving down to the next module on the slide, which is the REST API naming collection. So a proper understanding of what I mean by naming collections are more like the way you choose to name your endpoints. So it's up to you how you want to like name your endpoint. If you know the best way of practice for you, that's it. So going through it. So REST API naming conventions are those specific ways of naming endpoints. So if you can see a plain collection, you can see, you can go through the endpoints, you can see how I named my various endpoints. You have the topuniverse.org user profile. You have topuniverse.org/profile. You have topuniverse.org profile user. So then you go down to the versioning control. So you have the topuniverse/v1.0 profile. So we have the topuniverse/API/v1/profiles. Then the third one, which you have the topuniverse.org/API/v2/profile. So if you can go through this naming convention, you can see that there are similarities within the versioning collection than that of the plain collection. So when this REST API was being put in place, so there was a term that was being introduced, which is actually called versioning. So versioning makes it much easier for you to reuse an endpoint, and also helps you in, tracking and maintaining your code structure. So if you can look, there are similarities within the versioning, whereby I have different versions of the API profiles. So rather than the plain, I get to like think of a way on how to, use the same function but give it a different name. So versioning comes into help whereby you have like, let's say, as a back engineer, you were given a task to like, create or improve on your code or the endpoints to a certain version, whereby you need to make an update to your app or application. So in terms of versioning, that will help in, say, giving you less time on what to do, give you fast track on certain things that you need to do. Well, for me, if I'm being given that task and to like improve on my API version or improve on a certain endpoint, so what I'll just do is just to copy the whole API I've done, then give it a different version, then implement what I want to do without obstructing the existing records or the previous endpoints that are being called by the client or being used by the server. So That's what versioning comes to play. That's where versioning comes to place. So the next slides are REST API, status code, and meaning. So when the REST API architectural process was being made, they had to come up with some certain codes that will help in passing better information from the server to the client, then back down from the client to the server. So different naming codes were brought up. So serially, we have from 100 to 199, then we have from 200 to 299, down to 599. So whenever you try to hit an endpoint and you get to have a status code of 100 to 199, it just majorly means that, okay, your information is being processed or your information has gotten to a certain level, is awaiting response, is awaiting, some certain information that needs to be gotten or passed down from the server. So that's what source code 100 to 199 stands for. Um, for that of 200 to 299 is majorly used to like pass information whereby, okay, there's a success in whatever you're trying to do. Okay, the server has gotten a good response of your request and is now processing it at hand, or it's kind of, okay, it has accepted it, but you need to wait for a specific time for it to have success. So if you could see, the 200 stands for success or okay, depending on how you want to name it on your API structure. We have the 201, which is created. We have the 202, which is accepted. So down to 300 to 399. Majorly, there are those, the 300, 399 are majorly used for redirections. So let's say you're trying to hit a specific endpoint and there are no certain response being gotten from the server, and maybe there is an action for it to like redirect you to a different endpoint or a different page or whatever. That's where 300 comes to place. Like you can see, 301 means move permanently. So it's trying to tell you, okay, the endpoint you're trying to call has been redirected you to a permanent endpoint where you can get your resources from. So the source code 400 to 499, I know majorly we all know whenever we hear the word error 400, error 404, we do get that a lot in terms of maybe when there's a break in network, there's a break in the internet, or when a certain response is not being retrieved. So the server will just throw an error 400 or 404 or 401. So error 400 basically means it's a bad request. So what it means is that you aren't passing the direct response or the request. You're not giving the server the direct information, the request that it needs for it to like, okay, process your information and give it back to you. That was what error 400 stands for. So error 404 simply means not found. Let's say you're trying to hit an endpoint and there's a typo on the endpoint. So it shows you, okay, that, okay, what you're trying to access or you're trying to get cannot be found or is not found. So error 401 simply means, okay, let's say you're trying to hit an endpoint. Sorry, hold on, please. Just give me like a few minutes, please. So sorry.
This meeting is being recorded.
So moving down to the slide. So like I said, error 401 stands for unauthorized. It's an error that indicates that maybe a certain endpoint needs authentication in terms of token or login access, or typically a credential for it to prove that, okay, you have access to preview or receive any other information from the server. So error 500 to 599, I'm sure we all come across that most times when we do things as backend developers. So 500 simply stands for server error. So in terms of that, let's say maybe there's a certain break in code whereby a certain information is not being passed properly, and the server does not have that information or can't process that. It shows that a server error. So error 504 simply means gateway timeout. Let's say you are hitting an endpoint and it's taking time for it to respond back. So it throws an error 504. So error 502 means bad gateway. In terms of that, let's say you are making an external call to a third-party server and it's been down. The external server or the third-party server is down at that moment, or there's a change in whatever information in what you're trying to get on that point. It returns a bad gateway, which means that server cannot be accessed or informations cannot be brought in from that server. So moving down to the next module, which is REST API testing tools. So REST API testing tools are majorly applications or platforms that we developers do make use in, like testing our API to make sure that they are RESTful. In time, we have a lot of them. Let's see, you can see listed of them. We have the Postman, which is majorly being used by most every developers that I know of. We have Swagger, we have the SOAP UI, we have the Catalan, we have the REST console, we have the API G. So there are different kind of testing tools out there that can be used for free. There are some that are free, there are some that are like for enterprise, like you need to pay on for it for you to make use of them. But majorly, I can just say, okay, Postman or Swagger are my favorite most times, but majorly Postman. So moving on to the next slide. Okay, I think that's the end. So I will move down to questions from you guys. So the floor is open to anyone that has questions. If you have questions, you can type them down on the chat and I can answer them.
Okay, guys, so if you have questions, you can drop your questions on the chat. If you understood, you can say you understood. If you don't understand any part, you can just signify on the chat. I think we have about 11 persons on this call. So please, you can drop it on the chat if you have any question. Thank you.
Okay. A question from Oluwole. So typically, the patch and the puts are majorly the same thing, right? But for the puts is, let's say you have an information that you need to change and it doesn't, it's something that, okay, you are not sure if everything will be changed at once, or it doesn't requires you changing the entire information that you need. So let's say you have some few information that you need to change. Like let's say, okay, I have like various field to fill. Then okay, I have my name, my phone number, my email. And on that, I just need to change just the email. So instead of using put, I prefer using patch, because basically I'm not going to, it's not everything that I'm changing. So just one single field that needs to change, which is email. So with that, once I pass that action to the server, it already knows what exactly needs to change. So it's just going to pass that information that, okay, this is the information that needs to change. Others should remain the same. And it doesn't take the server power or the runtime. It doesn't take much of the server strength to do that. But in terms of puts, let's say you try to change just your name and you have several information that are the same. When you use put, it says that, okay, this is the only information that it needs to change, but still it takes all into the server and give the server like information. Just do this. This is what you need to do. Change, even if they're the same, change them again. So with that, you're using more of that server time. And you know you're not the only one on the server. And the response won't be quick for you. So you're using more of the server time when using put instead of patch. So the next person is. So the next person that has a question is in favor. Sorry, Oluwole, hope I explained, hope I got your question correct, or I answered it correctly. Hello, Oluwole. Okay. Let me move to the next person. Okay. So let me move to the next person. So Favor said, yes, I have a question. We use joy for validation. And you win. Sorry, I don't understand that question. Can you try and like retype the question so I can get? But with what I'm saying, I can just go through and understand what you're saying. So we use joy for validation. Yes, we do use joy for validation. So joy is more like a library that is being used by JavaScript. It's a built-in library. Let me not say built-in. It's a third-party built library that can be used for validation in terms whereby you don't want to like make your own kind of validation. You just need a quicker way of doing it without going through stress. So that's where Joy Validator comes in. You're using its framework to make your process much easier to validate, and also make your time frame and be make your time frame much quicker, something like that. So Neurosoft. So okay, sorry, you missed the beginning. Okay, I'm going to okay, I don't know what to do on that, but I'm more like going to explain again, but that will be later on. So the parts which you missed, you can just put it down so I can like, okay, go back there and know what exactly and know what part exactly you're talking about. So next person's favor also again. So okay, say okay. So favor asks the same question again. Yes, I have a question. We use joy for validation. We always run into errors. That says joy is not a function. If I test postman. So so pertaining that, so there is of two factors. So is either the version you're trying to use at that point does not like okay fit in with the your code version, which is your npm, or the the next one is that you are not calling the version, or you are not using the joy validator the way it should be. So, but for that, if it's something that you might need my help on, you might just reach out to me. I'm going to drop my email, then you can like, okay, send me a mail for me to like, okay, put you through on that. I don't know if that will help for me to explain better. So Oluwole asks another question. Is there a way to convert our web application to Windows? Is there a way for us to convert our web application to Windows or desktop? Well, for that, I would say yes. For that, I would say no. So it actually depends on which other language or the language you use in building your web application. So let's say in terms of using Node.js, PHP, what other one? What other one? So those ones, those are web. So Node.js and PHP, those are web server applications. So I don't feel they can be convertible to a window or desktop application. But in terms of when you are using C++, Python, C Sharp, what other language again? I think those three, yeah, majorly. You can easily like convert those ones into a Windows application or a desktop application. So I don't know if I got that, if I answered your question. So the next person said, okay, if I can ask a question on Node, I would like to confirm the statement. Node.js is a runtime. Why? I don't know the test frames. It's called framework. Well, Node.js is actually a framework to me. It's more like a framework built out of JavaScript. So why Express, Joy, and NodeMon are just libraries or packages that you can use in achieving most of what you need to do or things you are trying to achieve as a backend developer. So Express, Joy, and NodeMon are just packages or libraries that you can install on your backend application to help ease out in some terms or in some action that you need to achieve. Next person, Anete, said, I would like you to go over how API can be RESTful. So concerning that, okay, so REST API is how it could be RESTful is if the circle of communication is being done properly, and if you follow the best practice of it. So there are various practices that can be implemented. So number one, where you have the versioning, that's number one, is of good practice. So making use of versioning is of good practice. Making proper naming convention is of good practice. Then each other one. When there's a proper use of your status code, that's a good practice. So if all this stuff are meant and there's a good communication between the client and server, which is sending a request and receiving a response, that alone means your API is RESTful, since it's giving out the right information to the client. So in a typical example, let's say you are trying to get an information from a server, or you're building an API, or you just create an endpoint. Then that endpoint is to get a certain value from a server, and when you run that action or your API, you get to receive an information that tells you some certain stuff are not meant, or there's an error. That's not RESTful. It's not really RESTful. RESTful means when you have a proper channel, which is a request going through, being processed by the server, and the server gives you back that information as a response with other information needed from the server back to you. That's when it's RESTful. So hope I get that. So the next question is possibly give a real example. Okay, counter. Okay, so a better example is let's say you want to make payments now. Let's say using Paystack actually. So you want to make payments, then along the line you run the action of Paystack, trying to make payments, you input your card and every other details that is being required, and you press the action button to make payments. Then along the line, you don't get to receive any response, or there's a break in your channel of communication to that server. That is not RESTful. But in a case whereby you get to run that action and there's a success in your payments, and you get an information back as a response, indicating that your payment is being done properly and your charges has been debited from your account or from your card. That is when I would say is a RESTful API. So the next person, Bendex7, is asking me, can I use Postman to debug my source code if I am having errors on my Postman request, and I just have to do that in my code editor? Well, if I can get you right, well, Postman is not like your IDE editors or your code editors that are used in running debug, or you use in tracing issues. So Postman is more like it. Let me just say, is more like that, but not built in that form to give you information on wherever your code is having issue, or wherever you have bug. Postman is just there to test endpoints or APIs to see if what you're trying to achieve is being done properly. So in much example, let's say you're a backend developer and you are trying to build an endpoint to get you all the record that you have in your database, which is on your system. And doing that, you don't get to have that record sent back to you. So you just know, typically, when you don't get that right, just know it's from your code itself. So it won't literally tell you that this endpoint is not running because of this. It will only show you the status code of its status code is 400, it's 500, it's 200. So it's now left to you to go back to your code and trace down or track down every other possibilities that would warrant you having that error. So that's what Postman is for. It's not meant to be used for source code debugging and other stuff. It's majorly used for testing APIs. So I think that's the last person. And Norios soft. So I asked if you could like, okay, tell me which parts that you need me to go back and explain, or the parts where you missed out in the beginning. So I'm going to give like 2 or 3 minutes on that. So you can just like tell me where exactly so I can go back before I go into testing of Postman. Okay, no problem. If that's the case, I will send the slide down to the management so you can like dash it out or list it out to every one of you. Thank you. So so that leaves me to the part of showing you how you can use Postman to test your endpoint. So let me open my editor, my code editor. So what I have here, I don't know if you all can see my screen that I just showed now, my code editor.
Oh no, we can't see your code editor.
Okay, let me stop sharing and share back again. You still can see it, right?
Yes, we can, but you can switch it back to your VS Code.
Okay, you can see it now, right?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So early this morning, I just had to like run and like do something that I can like present for everyone. So so here I have like a server program that will allow me to test using Postman. So it's majorly a node, simple node program. It's nothing much on that. So my basic package that I used are just node more and Express. So Express is just going to give me the privilege to like, okay, run a proper or good request and response towards endpoints. So while NodeMon will give me the privilege to like, okay, have a rerun of my application without me saving or without me hitting the restart button. So it tells me in doing that. I know most of you or every one of you understand what NodeMon is all about and Express. So going through the index page where you have the start of the server, I get to call in the request, the Express module, which is the package. Then after calling that, I call out the files that I have on my REST what's it called, routes. So my route folder is this. If you can see my screen, where I have two other files, JS files. So then I have to like declare an app to like call the express, which is this, to instantiate a new call for that express. Then I have to declare a port that it should run on. Then I have to like, okay, test if my endpoint is working very well. So this exactly will make me know if my endpoint is working very well, or give me a signal if my endpoint is giving me or is being received back to me. So this is more like a channel to declare your API. So this app.listen port, so this is where it's going to listen and see, okay, if truly there are no errors on my application. So let's say now I get to do this. I get to have a, like, let me rename this, and I try, you can see, without saving my, or without refreshing my code, NodeMon has already captured the changes and run through and throw an error that, okay, there's an error in what you're trying to do, and it's telling me that routes is not defined. So it's, and major reason why is that is I declared routes to have a double S, and I called it here, and it's not saying it. So that's why it's throwing that error. But if I go back in, taking out the extra S that I have there, and I get to save my code. So node1 already knows, okay, there's a change and it doesn't throw any error. Then I'm good to go. So it's a simple application. So testing that now with Postman, you have to first of all know the base route of your application. So on your local system, as in every local system, your base URL is always 127.0.0.1. You can change that. You can change that using your, what is it called? Your terminal, if you want to change it to something different. But mine, I always take it, leave it to be the default. So I make use of 127.0.0.1. So the port that is going to run on is on 300. So let me test that on my browser so we can see what I'm trying to say. So here now, this is my base local URL. This is it. So when I click this, so it's saying that, okay, the site cannot be reached. So it's not seeing the ports that I declared for that application. So if you can remember, the application has a port of 3000. So if I go and put 3000 and I run it, so you can see the page I'm trying to test. It's working. So going back to the code, you can see it here. It's working. So if I make any changes, let's say I see and I visit again, you can see the changes. So this exactly, I'm hitting the, so I'm just trying to see if I have a proper communication with my server first before hitting down the API version. So the API is more like a different section from whatever you have on your application. So you can make use of your server in terms of declaring web pages like this, or you declare APIs that is to be used by other applications from that same server. So having a test on API, so I have here a declared endpoint for that. So where I have my new endpoint, which I said app.use API for my API testing endpoint. So, and it's calling a request.
Okay, hello Collins. Sorry, I think you're muted. So I don't know if it's from my end, but you are muted.
Okay, I think you can speak now.
Okay. With the previous things I said, oh, you heard it, or I was muted, or true.
Yeah, you were muted at some point. So I don't know if you can just go through it again. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. I'll go through it over again. So going back to the code. So like I said, I made a simple application this morning for this presentation. So where I have this folder called REST API. So
Okay, we can't see your screen. Sorry, I think somebody
wow.
just dropped a message on the chat.
Wow. Okay. Can you all see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. If I move to the editor, are you seeing the screen now?
Yes.
Okay, good. We are good to go. So like I said, I made this application for this presentation. So if you can see my screen clearly, on my top left, you have the name of the application, which is REST API, and some folders that are in it, and some JSON file that are on it. So for this application, just a simple application, which I just made use of two packages or modules that is called, which is the Express and the Node one. So like everyone understand what Express means and what NodeMon means, but I'm still going to explain. So NodeMon is more like a runtime catcher that helps to detect changes within an application on your local system. So Express is more like a framework that allows me have a proper communication or a request and response communication between two endpoints. Let's say I'm trying to communicate from my local system to my local database. So Express will help me performing all that. So looking at the main file for this application, which is the index.js. So I have here, firstly on line 2, the Express endpoints being called out. So I have to require it. I have to import it from my module. Then I have to declare two routers or routes, which are just basically folders that are inside the same application. If you look through, is route slash index and route slash routes. So if you look into the folder on my top left, when I go through routes, you can see the two folders are being called on my main our main entry file, which is the index here, highlighted here. So, and I come, so I want to make a new instance of my express. So instantiating a new function for that express to indicate, okay, you are going to be using this for now. So I declared it to be app. Then the ports that this application should run on. Then the app should like get this information, should pass me this information, top universe code, if the communication between the server and my client, which is my browser, have a good communication, okay, bring me back this information. So the same thing here, but this part here on line 16 is for my API declaration part using Postman. So down here we have the port.listen. So the port.listen is a channel that, okay, give an idea, okay, hey, Express, if you're trying to connect to this endpoint, the URL is this and the port for this is that. So it's passing information that, okay, if there's a successful communication between this, okay, pass me this information here, which is API is listening to ports. So it's trying to indicate, okay, you are listening to this port. So which you have here on my terminal, which indicates API is listening to that port. So there's a successful connection between my server environment now. So checking this now on my browser, I will have to see this for now. Let me comment this out. I'll have to see this for now. So app.get slash response should be sent. This is the information I need to get if there's a successful communication between my browser and my application, which is my server for now. So going back to the browser and refreshing it. So let's say I don't get to provide the right endpoint for this, or the right port for this. I get to have an error thrown that, okay, is it that it cannot be reached or the connection port for that does not exist? So that's where the port comes in, because in every application, there's a port attached to it. There's a channel attached to it. So the port is more like a channel where you can, okay, this is your entry point to every other thing you need to know about this specific person or this specific server. So that's what the port is all about. So once I go back and run the exact port number, which is 3000, and I press enter, it gives me what I needed from it, which is top universe Kahoot. If I go back and change it and say, okay, top universe Kahoot version 2, changes is now being captured by NodeMon. So it's running a check and it says, okay, there's this change on what I just did. So going back now to my browser to see if I still have a good connection to that port. You can see we have top universe Kahoot version 2, which is more of what I passed in here for me to know if there's a good channel or good communication between my browser and my server, which is REST API. So coming down to make use of my Postman, so I have to declare an API endpoint for my Postman. So you can do it in any way you want to do it. You can either say API underscore API underscore channel, or whatever name you want to give it. It doesn't necessarily if you name it API, or it doesn't matter if you name it whatever name. You can give it anywhere. You can give it channel. You can give whatever you want to give it. But the thing there is, okay, giving it the name API help the next person that you might want to, like, okay, hand over your code to, or okay, have a review of code on and see what exactly this means. Giving it the name API already run through my head that, okay, this is for API connection. It gives me the idea, okay, this is a API call to a certain request or a certain group of endpoints that needs to be reached out to. So I'm going to use the name version, which is API. Then I want to like connect this route, which I have here. So which is routes, then this route, which have some other endpoint, which is me, then which is you. So there are two endpoints that are there already, me and you. So if I want to test it now with my Postman, which I'm going to open up soon. So let me open up my Postman. So which is this. So you can see I'm still connected to the same base URL with the same port number, because I want to have access to that same database, to that same server, to that same machine. But this time I want to go through what I just created, which is the API part of it, and where I want to check if I can receive or get a RESTful response from my endpoint. So let's say I do this, I say, okay, API/me, then I hit it. You can see it gives me the information I was being passed into it. So which is this. So which is this information that I have here. This is me. So let's say in a case now, so with this now, this is a RESTful communication. This is a RESTful API communication between my Postman and my server. So let's say there is, and you can see between around here, right? You can see the status code for this is 200, which is okay. So let's say in the case whereby I don't have a RESTful communication. So let's say I want to remove this. So this API.m is not being declared on my endpoint. So when I run this, you can see it tells me specifically what the problem is. So it's telling me that you have a status code of 404, which means not found. So is it that you now go back to your code and check, okay, exactly what exactly problem is? Is it that I have a typo on my endpoint, or there's a problem on my server? So with this, we already know, okay, there's a problem with my endpoint, which is not giving it the full name, which is API/me. So with that being said, I want to give a prior introduction to Postman. So to most of you that are new to Postman or does not know what Postman is, so this is the Postman environment. So is more like every other application that you have, maybe your Microsoft Word, your browser, um, your every application that you can think of is more like that, is having a GUI that is more friendly and for you to understand. So within this part, you have your home, your workspace, and API network and all that. Every other thing here has its own specific use. So at my other parts here, which you have here, these are for collections. So you can see you have various endpoint collections here. These are just basically folders that contains different endpoints that I had to test on. You can see. So that's then on the bigger part of it, which is in the middle, this is where you have your free space to like call out the endpoint, give it a name, then make a call to see if you have a proper good communication. So the bottom part of it is where you have the information being passed back. Like let's say you hit an endpoint and information that is being passed back is being displayed here at the bottom part. So going back to my endpoint now, which is my code now, which is the server. So you can see here I made use of the verbs. I talked about API verb, which is post, get, put, patch, then delete. So majorly, I'm going to make use of just two of it, which is post and get. So I have here get and I have here post. So if I'm to call on this endpoint, which is me, and not using this verb that has been declared for it, I'm going to have an error. So let's say I come here and I say I want to do a post action. So this majorly, this point here gives you various options that can be performed on your endpoint. So you can see you have the get, post, put, patch, delete. You have the copy, the head, the option, the link, unlink, purge, lock, unlock, profound, and view. So the major ones that are being used majorly are just these five, which is the get, post, put, patch, and delete. So let's say I want to make a call to a get request and I'm passing a post verb. So once I click that, tells me there's an error. So the error can be various types. It could be maybe you can see the first one I explained was that okay, I missed a name or a naming collection, which is the E was not there. I got a 404. Then coming back now to use a different verb for it, it's still giving me a 404. So unlike what Favor asked, if I can use my Postman to test if my code is if I can use Postman to debug my code. So you can see I can't really tell what the error is here. You can only tell me what Postman is built to tell me. I don't know if you get me, Favor. So like now, I'm having a get here on my code, but coming now to test this part now, I'm using a post, which would have been a get. So when I run that, I'm having an error. So the error can vary of different type, but it's just left for you to just have a proper understanding of how you can trace your bugs or how you can retrace your errors. So Postman does not give you a specific line on where your error is coming from. Your application does that. or your server gets to be able to do that, or your code gets to do that on your console. So let's say I put like a phrase here to tell me, okay, there's an error. I will see that if I console that here, I'm going to see it as a log on my terminal here. But I didn't do like a large, let me say, test for that to occur. So that's it. So switching back to the get, and I run that now, I get to have what I need to receive. So going down to the one that says you, then I use the same error. I use the same mistake by saying a get instead of a put. I get the error. It's still telling me 404 not found. So it's left for me to go and check what exactly the problem is. But for me, I know the problem is me not using the right API verb, which is post. So once I hit on post, here we have it. We have hello to you. So which is the endpoint here, which comes with the verb post. So other things that need to be said here is also in terms of versioning. So you can see that making use of the good practice or best practice, which is being placed out by your fieldings, you can have a good and RESTful APIs if those procedures are being followed well. Using the right verb for the right actions, and also bringing and also making use of good naming collections for that. So in terms of versioning, so versioning comes to place whereby, like I said earlier, like helping you improve, like when you have a code to improve on, and that code is being used by various users, and you don't want to obstruct them from what they're doing, and you want to improve on that code. So versioning comes to place. So let's say you built an application whereby you didn't make use of versioning, right? So trying to improve on that code in order to build like, okay, a version 2 of your app being used by various users or customers out there, then you need to improve your code. It's going to take you time. Since you didn't use the proper version to do that, you have to like go back again, rename all those stuff all over again before pointing it out to the new improved API version, API endpoints. But in a case whereby you use versioning to indicate your endpoint, it gives you much easy access to improve on your codes, maintain and trace down bugs, things like that. So I want to make a good example of versioning. So let me go back to where I have the index here. So you can see here, index here, we have API slash v1, and I'm calling this folder, which is the route index. So the route index has an endpoint, which is a get endpoint. So let's say the name of this is hello v1. So it's a get verb action that I need to perform. So calling the, so me now trying to call the v1 now, trying to test if I can have a RESTful API on the v1. So going back to the main index, where I have to call the API version 1. So you can see here, I'm calling out the folder that contains that. So version 1. So going back to my code now, to my Postman, trying to test that out. So when I do that, API v1, right? API v1. So what is calling it here It's just a get and a slash. So since it's a slash, I don't need to do any other thing. I just have to press the enter. So you can see now the error that came here. If you can observe what just happened, why I'm having this error is because the verb action I recommended for my API version 1 is not the verb that I use to test on my Postman here. So that's I'm getting the error. So I know this now because I know what I declared over there on my code, which is this. It gets here, it gets verb, which is here. Then coming here to test it, I'm using a post. So if I should switch back now to a get, I have my hello v1. Hope you see that. So let's say now I'm being told now by my supervisor or my project lead that, okay, we are trying to build a new version of our application whereby we have to improve on some of our codes. But with that, we need to do everything on the fly, which is what we call live coding or live testing, or when something is live and you want to like build other improvements alongside with it. So that's where versioning comes to play its own role. So let's say now I didn't declare a version here now at this beginning. At this point here, I had to leave it here. I have to make it be this before without having a version. It's going to be difficult for me to like, okay, think on how to do that or think of a way to improve the code. So, but with the version parts of it, giving your API a version, so it will give me the ability to do more. So what I can just do is just to come here and copy this and just say, okay, v2, calling that same folder that has that stuff, right? So let's say this is v2 and I go back and say, okay, this is v2. Let me see v2, if v2 is giving me the same thing I have. So see, I'm having the same response and the API is from v2. So I have a good communication here, so I can go on and make improvement in my code. So let's say now I don't want to make use of what I have here on the response I have on v1. So on v1 here, on v1 endpoint, I have hello v1. So let's say I want to have a different call. So I want to say hello v2 new endpoints, right? So you can see now that I'm calling this same stuff, right? And I'm making use of this. So let's say I put let's say v2 improving on, sorry, let me give it a name. So I can make improvement on what I want to do here and giving it a different versioning, which is here, right? So I can come here now and be doing whatever I want to do. Why the previous ones? So what do I name it here? So I said new. So new. So hello version 2, new endpoint. So I can be making my improvements. Why the previous ones that are there before are still running properly, not tampering on any code or having any issues. So the v1 can still be used by my previous customer depending on when I improve on my version 2 and I want to push it out there for the customers to use. So with that being said, I believe I'll leave the floor open for anyone to ask question, or if there's anyone who has any question to ask me, please.
Okay, yeah, Collins, there are some questions on the chat, so you can just go through them. Thank you.
Okay. So the first person is okay, Pendex. What if I decide to write a put request on Postman? Okay, I'm on my body. Okay, on my body payload, I missed to format. I missed the format of my code in there. Okay, so let's say you are trying to like make a request to make changes, and within that request you have a payload. Then there's a mistake or there's a typo on your JSON format that you are pushing out there. It will basically tell you that something is not being done properly. But on Postman, if you do that, it will indicate to you that, okay, there's an error. So I want to copy what you have here for me so I can place it on Postman. So on Postman, it will tell you exactly what the problem is. So let's say, so I'm making use of the body. So I go to raw, and I change it now to JSON. So once I paste that, you can see there's an error indicating that, okay, one, you didn't close, you didn't give it a double quotation. Yeah, the age is missing a double quote. Why at the end here, instead of a comma, you are using a semicolon or a colon, sorry, semicolon, yeah, semicolon. So if I do that, you can see there's no errors being shown or being thrown by Postman on my testing tools, which is on the body. So, but on a live,
interrupt you. They say they can't see your screen
yeah,
from the chat. They can't see your Postman.
you can see my Postman. Okay, let me stop sharing and share again. So I'm about switching to my Postman. So please indicate if you see. Okay, can you see my Postman now?
It's still loading.
Well, okay. I think that is the network. What about now?
I don't know if it's from my end, but from my end, it's still loading. Miss Amaka, is it same for yours or anybody on the chat, please?
It's still loading on my end.
And probably my network then. So I'm going to stop sharing and share back again. So can you all see it now?
Okay, still the same. Still the same.
Oh. Okay. How do we do that? How do we do that? Okay. Let's see.
Okay, so maybe because of time, you could just explain, like make it like best possibly explain and get explanation, and maybe they can reach out to you via LinkedIn.
Oh.
Because there are other questions I think on the chat, and your screen is
Okay.
still showing loading.
Okay. Let me just see if I can. So like, okay, I'll just use the chat then and answer every possible way I can. So for Benex, so for Postman, we always throw you an error if you have any typos on your payload for Postman. So like this now, like what you sent on like your payload you send, which is a JSON format. So you have here the age, which is missing a quotation. It's meant to be in the double quotes. And you have here after the 12, you have a semicolon, which is meant to be a comma, or you leave it empty because that's the last line of your JSON format. So we now said, assuming you didn't notice this mistake on your code, can you detect it on Postman? Well, yes, you can detect it on Postman, like I said. If you place this here, you place this specific sample payload on your Postman, it will definitely throw you errors with a red line underlining it that, okay, there's an error, you need to correct it. So, and Neurosoft is saying, is payload a word used to refer to your data? I'd like to know. Yeah, payloads are more like they're more like datas. Yes, exactly. It can mean a lot of things. It can mean different things. It can mean a response being gotten from the server itself. So whatever is being sent, just like you sending a parcel to someone, like you want to send a parcel being delivered through a delivery van or something to someone, is a parcel. It's a parcel. The person sees it as a parcel, you sent it as a parcel or a package. So it's more like that. So in other words, data can be replaced in so many different words. You can use package, you can use words like payload, you can use words like objects. So data can be of various names. So payload is a word used for data. So it depends on how you explain very better with that. But payload is a word that can be used in place of data. You can use package, parcel, and what is called payload. Exactly, things like that. Or objects to declare your items. Okay, all right. So Favor is saying, is it possible to have something like this? Or something like this, I don't get what exactly. I think you need to indicate what you are trying to point out to. Okay, oh, Anete, sorry about that. So Neurosoft is saying, will the call to API version 1 not produce the what is it called? The second result? Yes, it will. It will, but it all varies on what you give the endpoint itself. Because, like I said earlier, your naming collection depends on how it's going to relate with other stuff. So let's say now I'm calling version 2, then a previous record is version 1. So since I have the application sticking to that endpoint version 1, right? Then I have the naming convention, let's say version 1 slash user slash me declared on that stuff. So that version 1 already knows, okay, that version me will not collide with whatever I want to declare with version 2. So you can do it in different ways. I can copy that stuff and create a new folder for that for my own version 2 to start with. So that's the best practice. So fine, that might be a mistake for me doing it in the same place. But the best practice is copy that same function or copy that same endpoint that you have there that is existing to a different location or a different folder. Then the naming convention you need to give it either version 1, version 2, version 3. Then you can improve on your code while the previous code is or the previous endpoint are being used by your front-end developers or by your users. So I can see what we do. Okay. So Favor is asking the last question. Okay. Reading post using post together post. So Favor, is this like a challenge you are facing, or which you want me to help you with, or is more like an example of which you want me to explain for you? I don't really know. Oh, it's a challenge for me to break. Okay. Okay. So post API post API dot post slash this, then request and that's okay, the schema. This is the schema. Okay, okay, it's an issue that you are facing. Okay. Okay.
Okay, I think.
Okay,
Collins, sorry, I will drop your
okay.
LinkedIn so they
Okay,
can.
okay.
Yeah. So guys, please check the chat. Miss Amaka earlier dropped it, so please check it, and I will drop it again, so you can connect with him via LinkedIn. Yeah, Miss Amaka just did that. Thank you. So please, everyone on the call, please give Mr. Collins a follow on LinkedIn. Then please, for favor, you're having a challenge, you can continue the conversation there. So please connect with Collins via LinkedIn. Yeah, since you're having a challenge. Thank you.
All right. So with all that being said, I think that will be all from me. And I would like to say thank you all for giving me the opportunity to lecture you on something I know in my own possible way. I know you might still have some other questions to ask. You can reach me on my LinkedIn page, or if possible, I can, we can have a Google Meet meetup where I can help you out with some other things. So thank you very much. Thank you for listening.
All right, thank you so much.
Ms. Amaka, please, you can take over. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So thank you so much, Collins, for coming on this call. We really appreciate. So I think, okay, you can share the file with them later on, and we'll send it to them on the group chat. So thank you guys for coming on this call, and thank you, Collins. It was a pleasure having you. At least we learned new things. So bye, guys. Have a lovely day.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much.